John Matthews vanished without a trace, leaving his family devastated. But the shocking truth was far darker than anyone imagined. What began as a mysterious disappearance soon revealed a chilling plan to fake his own death and escape with his secret lover. John Matthews was the kind of man everyone thought they knew. On the surface, he led a life that seemed ordinary and even admirable. He had a stable job at the local factory, a modest home in a quiet suburban neighborhood, and a family that depended on him. Neighbors often described him as dependable, friendly, and responsible. Children waved when he walked by, and adults nodded with respect as he passed. Yet beneath this familiar exterior, John's life was far more complicated than anyone realized. He carried a secret that grew heavier with each passing day, one that slowly began to consume his thoughts. The secret was not criminal in nature at first. It was a forbidden love, a passionate affair with someone far removed from his family life. Every stolen moment and hidden message fed an obsession that he could neither control nor resist. The excitement of secrecy made him feel alive in a way he hadn't felt in years, yet it came with constant tension. As the weeks turned into months, John's behavior began to change subtly. He spent more time away from home, often claiming long hours at work or sudden business trips. His wife noticed small inconsistencies: mysterious phone calls, erased messages, and late-night outings that didn't add up. Friends sensed a shadow of distraction in his demeanor, but no one could pinpoint the source. Then one evening, everything changed. John vanished. His car was discovered abandoned on a remote stretch of road outside town. The doors were locked, the keys missing, and nothing inside suggested a struggle or foul play. The scene baffled investigators. How could a man disappear so completely, leaving no trace? Speculation ran rampant. Some believed he had met with an accident. Others whispered about foul play, and a few daring souls even suggested he had simply walked away from it all. The community was gripped by uncertainty. Families mourned prematurely, and friends replayed their last interactions with John, searching for clues that might explain his disappearance. The local police launched a full-scale investigation, scouring nearby forests, rivers, and roads, but weeks passed without any sign of him. News of his disappearance spread across the region, drawing media attention. For the town, the fear was more than curiosity. It was a deep unease. A man who had seemed so ordinary had vanished without warning, leaving a void that was impossible to ignore. Behind the scenes, however, a very different story was unfolding. John had meticulously planned every detail of his disappearance. Every move he made in the weeks leading up to that night had been part of a larger strategy, a plan that no one suspected. He had studied methods of creating the perfect illusion, researched how to manipulate digital records, and ensured that his absence would appear sudden and tragic. While the town mourned and the authorities struggled to make sense of the situation, John's mind was elsewhere, consumed with the thrill of a life entirely of his own choosing. The quiet streets, the anxious friends, the frantic investigators, they were all part of a world he was about to leave behind, a world he believed he could escape without consequence. Months slipped by after John Matthews vanished, and the town began to settle into a fragile sense of closure. Life resumed its normal rhythm, but whispers and doubts lingered. Strange occurrences kept popping up, subtle hints that something about John's disappearance didn't quite fit. Bank accounts showed unusual withdrawals in small, calculated amounts, often from ATMs miles away from his last known location. A few locals claimed to have glimpsed someone resembling John in distant towns, fleeting sightings that raised more questions than answers. Authorities began to take notice, piecing together fragments of evidence that pointed toward a reality no one had suspected. A deeper investigation revealed hidden messages and digital traces that painted a disturbing picture. John had meticulously planned his vanishing act. Emails between him and his lover, carefully concealed on encrypted devices, outlined steps for the perfect disappearance. Phone records showed a series of burner phones and secret numbers used solely for communication with her. Investigators realized that his accident on that lonely road was not an accident at all. It had been staged with precision, designed to fool the police, his family, and even the media. Every detail of the abandoned car, from the locked doors to the missing keys, had been calculated to create a convincing illusion of a tragic mishap. But even the best-laid plans can falter. Small errors began to emerge as authorities scrutinized his past weeks. Receipts from gas stations, hotel records, and travel documents hinted at trips that didn't match his supposed timeline. It became evident that John had underestimated the vigilance of those around him. The digital footprint he thought hidden was starting to reveal itself, connecting towns, people, and transactions that traced a path of deliberate deception. Each discovery made the investigation more perplexing and more shocking. The story, once seen as a disappearance, began to take on the weight of a calculated crime. The community that had mourned John S. presumed death now faced a new reality. He had manipulated everyone for his own gain, leaving lies and confusion in his wake. The police, once frustrated by dead ends, now followed a trail that promised answers. As they pieced together John's movements, the picture that emerged was chilling. A man who had seemed ordinary, dependable, and trustworthy was capable of extraordinary deception. Investigators also uncovered the emotional toll of John's plan. His wife and children had endured months of uncertainty and grief, unaware that the man they mourned was orchestrating a secret life. The betrayal went beyond the practical details of a faked death. It was a violation of trust that cut deeply into the lives of those closest to him. Every secret document, every hidden message, and every forged signature revealed a man so consumed by desire that he risked everything. The deeper the investigation went, the clearer it became that John Matthews had been living a double life, a life carefully constructed to separate reality from illusion. The town, the authorities, and his family all waited with bated breath for the moment when the truth would finally come into focus. A truth that promised to be more shocking than anyone could imagine. The investigation into John Matthews' disappearance took a dramatic turn when a witness came forward in a neighboring state. A gas station clerk, who had initially thought nothing of a man in a wig and sunglasses, suddenly remembered the encounter when shown a photograph of John. Surveillance footage from the station revealed a figure who moved cautiously, checking his surroundings as if expecting someone to be watching. The images confirmed what investigators had long suspected. John had not simply vanished. He was actively living under a new identity. This revelation reignited the case and sent shockwaves through the community that had mourned his death. Authorities began tracing every possible connection. Phone records showed that John had been in constant contact with his lover, coordinating meetings and planning his movements to avoid detection. Financial records indicated cash withdrawals at unusual intervals, suggesting a carefully managed attempt to remain off the official grid. Investigators pieced together his route, revealing a pattern of calculated decisions from which towns he passed through to the exact places he stopped to refuel or eat. Each discovery added to the portrait of a man who had meticulously plotted his escape, yet it also exposed cracks in his plan, mistakes that would ultimately lead to his capture. As the trail grew clearer, detectives also examined the role of John's lover. She had been instrumental in helping him evade authorities, offering shelter, advice, and assistance in securing false identification. Their relationship, once hidden, was now central to understanding the scheme. The authorities began to uncover a network of temporary addresses, rented vehicles, and prepaid cell phones, each element a piece of the elaborate puzzle John had constructed. What had seemed like a disappearance was, in reality, a complex operation that required patience, cunning, and an unsettling willingness to deceive everyone around him. The case gained media attention, fueling speculation and fascination. Headlines painted John as both a criminal mastermind and a desperate lover, a man willing to destroy his own life for passion. Public interest intensified as new details emerged, each revelation more sensational than the last. People who had once mourned him now debated the morality of his actions, the consequences of deceit, and the lengths someone might go to pursue forbidden desire. Meanwhile, law enforcement worked tirelessly, following leads that often seemed trivial at first, but gradually formed a coherent map of John A.'s movements. Despite all the planning, John's sense of invincibility began to unravel. The investigator's persistence, combined with small oversights on his part, created openings. A careless use of a real signature on a rental agreement, a brief sighting by an observant local, and the cumulative weight of digital and financial traces narrowed the net around him. Every step he took to avoid capture paradoxically left evidence for detectives to follow. The longer the investigation continued, the more apparent it became that John's carefully constructed life under a false identity was unsustainable. The tension mounted, not just for law enforcement, but for a public captivated by the unfolding drama. With each revelation, the stage was set for the moment when John Matthews's elaborate deception would finally collapse, and the shocking truth would be laid bare for all to see. After months of tireless investigation, authorities finally pinpointed John Matthews's location. He had settled in a quiet coastal town, far from the suburban streets where he once lived. To the outside world, he appeared to be an unassuming resident, blending in seamlessly with locals. But law enforcement knew better. They had followed his trail through a web of financial transactions, rental agreements, and surveillance sightings. Every detail they had meticulously gathered led them to this final destination. For John, the sense of safety he had enjoyed for so long was about to be shattered. He had believed that a careful disguise and a new identity would keep him hidden forever. He altered his appearance, changed his name, and lived a life that seemed mundane and unremarkable. He took small jobs, frequented local stores, and kept interactions minimal, all in the hope that no one would notice him. Yet, even the smallest slip revealed cracks in his carefully constructed facade. A routine check at a rental office exposed the use of his real signature, a single traceable mistake that provided authorities with the confirmation they needed. The realization that his freedom could be undone by such a minor oversight must have been terrifying, though he could not have predicted the speed with which the investigators would act. Law enforcement approached the operation with precision. They coordinated with local authorities, planning surveillance and a strategic approach to ensure a safe apprehension. For weeks, they observed his daily routine, noting patterns and vulnerabilities. The plan had to be perfect. John was cunning, and any misstep could allow him to vanish once again. Investigators noted his every move, waiting patiently for the right moment to intervene. It was a delicate balance of strategy and timing, requiring both restraint and decisiveness. Finally, the opportunity arose. John left his modest apartment, unaware that authorities had surrounded the area. They moved in quietly, careful not to alert him prematurely. When they confronted him, the man who had fooled so many over months of deception could no longer escape. The moment of capture was both dramatic and anticlimactic. He was simply led away in handcuffs, the life he had built under a false identity crumbling instantly. Inside, investigators discovered evidence that confirmed their suspicions: financial fraud, forged documents, and a detailed record of his plans to evade capture permanently. The reality of his actions, which had seemed abstract for so long, now manifested in a tangible, undeniable form. News of John's capture spread rapidly, leaving the town and the nation in shock. Friends and neighbors who had mourned his death struggled to reconcile the image of the man they thought they knew with the reality of his deception. His lover, implicated in aiding his escape, faced scrutiny and legal consequences as well. The story became more than just a case of a faked disappearance. It was a tale of obsession, betrayal, and the dangerous lengths to which someone could go when driven by desire. As John sat in custody, awaiting trial, the consequences of his elaborate schemes loomed large, and the full weight of his actions began to settle over him. The trial of John Matthews captivated the nation. Courtrooms were filled to capacity, journalists swarmed outside, and viewers across the country followed every development. For the first time, the full scope of his deception was laid bare. Evidence of his faked death, forged documents, and financial manipulation painted a picture of a man who had meticulously planned every step of his disappearance. But beyond the technical crimes, the emotional toll on his family and community became impossible to ignore. His wife and children had endured months of grief, believing him gone forever, only to learn that their lives had been manipulated for his personal gain. The betrayal ran deep, and the courtroom was filled with the weight of collective heartbreak. The prosecution presented a timeline of John's movements, showing how he had staged his disappearance, assumed a false identity, and coordinated with his lover to evade authorities. Surveillance footage, rental agreements, and bank statements created an unassailable chain of evidence. Each revelation stunned the audience, revealing the extent of his obsession and the lengths to which he had gone to create a parallel life. The meticulous planning that had once seemed clever now appeared cruel, highlighting a complete disregard for the people who had trusted him most. John's defense attempted to frame his actions as impulsive and driven by passion, but the evidence was overwhelming. Months of careful plotting contradicted claims of a sudden lapse in judgment. Witnesses testified about his calculated behavior, his steps to avoid detection, and the extensive preparation that had gone into his disappearance. Even his lover, once seen as a willing accomplice, became part of a narrative that exposed the full extent of manipulation. The courtroom atmosphere was tense, charged with the shock of betrayal, and every day brought new layers of detail that kept the public riveted. When the judge announced the sentence, there was a palpable sense of finality. John Matthews was given a lengthy prison term, a punishment reflecting both the severity of his crimes and the emotional devastation inflicted on his family. The decision sent a clear message. No amount of planning or cunning could erase the consequences of deliberate deceit. His lover faced charges as well, a stark reminder that complicity in such a scheme carried its own risks. As John was led away in handcuffs, the community that had once mourned him began the slow process of healing, grappling with the shock and betrayal while seeking closure. In the aftermath, the story of John Matthews became a cautionary tale. It was recounted in newspapers, discussed on talk shows, and dissected by legal analysts, serving as a reminder that actions driven by desire and secrecy can have irreversible consequences. For the town, the case left a lingering sense of vigilance, proof that the most ordinary-seeming individuals may harbor secrets capable of shaking entire lives. Though time would dull the immediate shock, the legend of the man who faked his death to pursue forbidden love remained etched in memory, a chilling testament to the power of deception and the inevitability of justice.